Today will be the last session for Unit 1, uh, formulating the research problem and the problem statement. I have already given you assignment on formulation of the our research problem identification, the motivation, objectives. So majority of you have sent. So I will go through it and I will pass on my comments. See, any question that needs answer can be a research problem. However, not all questions can be transformed into research problems. So, what all matters is your knowledge in research methodology. This I have already started, but not continued. Your knowledge in research methodology, your knowledge in the subject, and your understanding of the issues. So, for formulation of the research problem, you have to identify the sources where the research problems exist so that you can get from the people, you can get from problems, or you can identify through programs or phenomena. So research problem is your topic. So now we are going to consider one after the other all the aspects related to selection of the research problem. So you have to consider the following before you select your topic. First of all, your interest. So you should have an interest in that particular research topic or in the area. And then your as well as your supervisor's expertise. Now, when you are selecting your research problem, you must know what are the concepts that can be measured. That means if you have carried out certain amount of work, it should be a recognizable quantity of work. It is not simply, suppose you start um, trying to solve a problem. So you formulate the relationship between the dependent variable and a set of independent variables. And it so happens that you know the relationship between them is some polynomial. So what you do is you collect a simple data of set of independent variables and the corresponding dependent variable and present the relationship in the form of a formula. So that is not a research. That is only understanding the behavior or relationship between the independent variables and dependent variables. So something new, something measurable contribution should be there. And the topic should be relevant to your profession. Now you are an engineer, a soil mechanics engineer or a hydraulics engineer. So if you select a problem on say social sciences and say that this is my research, it is not appropriate. It may be research but not relevant to your field of study. So somehow you can also take problems which are related to the humanities, but they must be linked to your field of specialization. Suppose you consider the supply of water to a particular area and you identify the problems of the inhabitants of a particular locality and try to resolve their problems through your research in the form of identification of a good source of water and then identification of a system through which you can distribute water to the people needed and you can distribute water in sufficient quantities and you can distribute the water to the needy people during the time in which they require. So you have started with this humanity, I mean, a society's interest. It appears to be a problem related to social sciences. But you have to link that issue to your field of specialization. So that is how the topic should be relevant to your profession and subject area. And then you should also consider the data availability and ethical issues. So your research problem statement is the foundation and focus of your research report. It is clear, standalone statement that makes explicit what it is you are aiming to discover or establish or research into it. Now, you should take all precautions to avoid your problem statement to be poorly worded, or it should not be unfocused, or it cannot be ambiguous. So, if your research problem statement is poorly worded or unfocused or ambiguous, the rest of your research is likely to go off the track very early. You will do a great deal of unnecessary reading and writing, losing sight of the big picture, and probably your entire brain and mind and thinking. So, you have to state your problem in such strong words which reflect what you are aiming to do. And you should focus on your main topic, main activity. And at the same time, it cannot be an open minded or open loop type of study. So you should be very clear and not too much ambitious or ambiguous topic can be selected. So, based on these, we can identify the characteristics of a good research problem statement. So, this is what, in fact, I wanted to discuss today. This, along with this, characteristics of a good or qualities of a good research. So, first, we'll consider the characteristics of a good research problem statement. So a good research problem. No, already you have all submitted your assignments on this. Now you compare whether the problem statement which you have identified carries these characteristics or not. So a good research problem statement must unambiguously communicate to the reader and user of the research the specific question to be addressed in the study. So what is the specific question you are addressing in your study? So that without any ambiguity, you have to identify. A good and feasible research problem statement must be clear. There is no ambiguity, as I told already. It should be researchable. See, you should have some stuff in that. So you should identify a gap in the state of art of the knowledge, and then you have to fill in that. So it must be a researchable thing, and it should address a problem, a specific problem. The problem may be of academic interest or interest to the industry or organization or to the community, but it should address a problem. So writing your research problem statement, the first thing to do is to select your research topic, which is the issue or subject area that you intend to conduct your study. Research problem statements are preferred when they have an outcome-based verb at or near the beginning. That means development of or um, analyzing or analysis of or a critical review of. So like this, when you commence your statement of your research problem, the outcome-based verbs should be there near the beginning of the sentence. So these are a list of good outcome based verbs: identify, define, describe, review, indicate. So there's a good lot of list I have given to you. You can go through them. Okay. Now there are certain words or verbs which are not uh, allowed, or which are to be avoided to the maximum extent possible. You see, verbs such as understand, know, explore, investigate, examine, discuss. So all these things, understand, know, explore, investigate, examine, discuss, they reflect the lack of knowledge on the topic which you have selected. If you say that the research problem is to understand, that means you do not know something and you want to understand it. So like that, all these verbs are forbidden verbs. There are poor verbs as they describe process but not outcome. They can be used as aim but not objectives. So the aim is to understand the behavior between two parameters. So for that, you can formulate an objective. So these verbs can be used in context of identifying the aims of your research. You can discuss something endlessly without ever having to make recommendations, draw conclusions, or offer a result. So, to discuss, if you say, discussion can be prolonged. There can be so many points which we can find out and find out the lapse or pitfalls in that particular outcome. So, therefore, to discuss will be only, it will not give proper conclusion. You have to discuss, and then after discussion, you have to draw certain inferences. So, those inferences can be formulated or framed into conclusions. So, discussions will help only in the analysis of your result, analysis of your work. So, you have to discuss what you have done, what you have identified. So, what is your explanation for such a behavior or for such a result like that? You might be exploring, examining, or investigating as part of your process, but they cannot be the end result of your research, which should be more tangible. So, all these things, your discussion, exploring, examining, investigation, are a part of your analysis only. So, that you should know. So, this already I have discussed formulation of objectives. Also, I discussed about sub-objectives. This, of course, I have not, uh, perhaps I have not dealt this. The objectives should start with words such as to determine, find out, ascertain, measure, explore. So, wording of objectives determines the type of research, whether it is a descriptive or correlational. Now, to determine means you are giving an emphasis on finding something. To determine the relationship between two parameters through your experimental or empirical way of research, or explore the reason for a systematic behavior, for the behavior of a system. So it is exploratory research. So like that, you can have these, with the help of these objectives, you can make the reader understand what type of research you are conducting, whether it is descriptive or correlational or experimental, and the type of research design you need to adopt. So when once you identify these objectives, naturally the research design will follow. What type of research design has to be taken? Now, I told that I asked you to read about these variables from the text which I have, material which I have given. Yes. So something about constructing a hypothesis. See, hypothesis means a particular identification of a particular concept or identification of a particular statement which relates your work. So it is an anticipation of nature or a hunch, assumption, or an assertion. So that means what you do is your hypothesis is whether a set of independent variables influence the dependent variable in a linear way or in a um, exponential way or a logarithmic way or something. Is it a geometric proportion? So like that, you can identify the relationship and you can formulate a statement which is called as the hypothesis, and you will test that hypothesis and you will either prove or disprove your hypothesis. So the hypothesis is the one which helps to assess whether your research outcome is in accordance with the initial formulation, initial understanding. So it may be right, or it may be partially right, or it may be wrong. It doesn't matter. If it is right, you will say that it is right. If it is partially right, you will say that it is right under such and such circumstances. If it is wrong, also you will say that the hypothesis which we have started, has failed. But it has failed. How it has failed? Under the environment in which you have worked. It has failed uh, uh, in the concept or in the framework of the data you have considered. So your hypothesis which you have identified or stated in the beginning may not be supported by the data you have selected. So
the person sitting on the boat is trying to observe the flow of the same river. What is the interpretation? Because the velocity of the water relative to the boat is not changing and the person is only observing that relative velocity, for that person, the same flow of the river water is appearing to be steady, not changing with time. So the same flow may appear to be steady or unsteady depending on the choice of the reference frame.
Hello? Who is interfering? list down what you are going to do. So your objectives, tasks, and then methodology and the strategy. So which are the variables to be considered and what tests are to be collected, what type of analysis is to be done. So that is your strategy. So the total thing is an operational plan, and you have to identify the procedures to be adopted. And finally, you test your entire research design. Now I will go to the qualities of a good research. So this criteria of a good research. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
So the criteria of good research, whatever may be the types of research, works and studies, one thing that is important is that they all meet on common ground of scientific method employed by them. So the scientific method means the research methods. One expects scientific research to satisfy the following criteria. What are they? So the criteria of a good research, the purpose of research should be clearly defined and common concepts be used. Then the research procedure used should be described in sufficient detail to permit another researcher to repeat the research for further advancement, keeping the continuity of what has already been attained. So, first of all, you should clearly define and the common concepts what you are using. Suppose you are using a, an uncommon concept, that is a concept which is not known to anyone earlier, then what you have to do is you have to establish and you have to explain in good terms about its validity in your context or in the with respect to your area of work, whatever concept you are newly adopting. So first you might have borrowed that particular concept from somewhere where it is there, not in our engineering field, or even if it is in our engineering field, maybe not in civil engineering. So if you are adopting certain things, say for example, I will tell you one thing. When you are analyzing the problems related to the stress, strain, etc., you can use some similar concepts with ergonomy. Ergonomy means the stress and strain the individuals face due to their mental exercise or mental work. So, if some researcher has produced a relationship between his physical strength and his mental ergonomy, or so that type of relationship or that type of concept, perhaps you can use in your structural engineering or in your soil mechanics. So, but that should be established first, saying that such and such a relationship is borrowed from that field and we are trying to apply it to our case. So that normally this type of study will be is nowadays taking place. For example, all your neural networks problems, fuzzy wuzzy. Now, all these things are developed based on human behavior, neurons behavior. So that neural network concept is borrowed in the engineering field extensively, and the present state of art of research is the neural network and the analytical hierarchy. So all these things are borrowed from non-engineering concepts or non-engineering fields of study. So they are now being adopted and applied. Similarly, the stochastic process has been used in your transportation traffic engineering studies or in your water resources studies. So the time series, etc. They are basically stochastic processes. So those stochastic processes are borrowed and they are extensively used in engineering, especially in civil engineering. So like that, whatever you are using a new concept which you are borrowing, that must be clearly made. So the second point, the research procedure used should be described in sufficient detail to permit others. See, it is not that you know. See, normally what happens is the basic problem with the majority of our people is that they don't try to explain what they have done because they think that the others know that. See, whatever you have done, you know it. So when they are putting it in the statement, they express the results very vaguely because they think that the relationship or the reason why that behavior has come is known. It is known to you because you have done it, you have studied it, you have analyzed it, and you have drawn some inference from it. But the other person, unless otherwise, the beginning and the middle and end part are not properly linked, they will not be able to understand. Like in your derivation, suppose I give the first statement and a statement in the middle and a statement in the end, and simply say that after simplification, I get this equation, and further simplification, I get this equation. You may not be able to understand unless otherwise what type of technique you have done. So integrating or summing up or averaging or taking logarithms on both sides, something like that. The physical thing which you have done, that must be explained during a derivation. In the same way, in your research also, you must clearly describe in detail whatever you have done so that the other researcher should be able to repeat your work or maybe further extend it where you have left. So like that, it should be clearly and in detail to be explained. The procedural design of research should be carefully planned to yield results that areas that are as objective as possible. So the procedural design, you have to plan it carefully. See, which study is to precede which study. See, when you are constructing a building, you cannot construct the fourth floor first and then the second floor. So you have to start from the foundation, first floor, second floor, third floor, like that. So when you have certain thing, suppose you want to conduct a study on the resilience. So you cannot apply the load at once. Gradually you have to increase the load. So you apply the final load, then the structure or something will fail. So that what happens in between you will not be knowing. So in same way, your research, experimentation or procedure should be planned carefully to yield your results that are as objective as possible. The researcher should report with complete frankness. This is very, very important. Flaws in your procedural design and estimate their effect upon the findings. So there is nothing wrong if you say that your results are limited. They are within 30% or 40% of error or deviation. You should be frank. You should be frank enough to explain, accept it. So that frankness is required. The analysis of data should be sufficiently adequate to reveal its significance, and the methods of analysis should be appropriate. The validity and reliability of the data should be checked carefully. See, if you are not generating your data, if you are not using primary data, if you are using a secondary data, the source of the data should be well established. Whether it is from a valid source, you cannot say that my friend has given, or my senior has given, or my colleague has given. So it must be available through a published journal or published paper or an accepted report, research report, or something like that, a thesis that is submitted. So something, it should be a valid data. So the analysis of data should be sufficiently adequate to reveal its significance, and the methods of analysis used should be appropriate. The validity and reliability of the data should be checked. Then conclusions confined to those justified by the data of the research and limited to those for which data provide an adequate basis. This point I had told. See, whenever you are giving your conclusion should be based on your data, and you have to clearly mention the boundaries within which your conclusions are valid. Greater confidence in the research is warranted if the researcher is experienced, has a good reputation in research, and is a person of integrity. In other words, we can state the qualities of good research are as under. See, these are the qualities of good research. One. Yeah. Good research is systematic. Good research is logical. Good research is empirical. Good research is replicable. You can also add, good research is free from plagiarism. Good research is useful to the society or useful to the profession. Good research is explanatory. That means it should explain something. Good research should be through appropriate research methods. Good research is measurable. Good research, of course, is repeatable, replicable, already I told. So these are all the qualities of good research. So already I have sent this material to you. You go through it. Now what I will do is, I will send you a list of questions and you prepare answers for those questions. Okay, they will be useful for not only understanding but also in the examination point of view. They will be very useful for you. So all these things I have explained. What we are left is about the data collection. Data collection, sources of data, and analysis of data. Now, why yeah. See, why I am not giving much importance to this data collection and source of data is that most of the books, textbooks, and other things, they deal about the data collection aspects related to social science, humanities, commerce, and management. Because that type of data, the type of data which they use is entirely different from the type of data we as engineers consider for collection and analysis and interpretation. So basically, their data is a qualitative data. They test or they study the behavioral aspects of a particular thing. Whereas we also study the behavioral aspect, but our study is in quantitative terms. So we use numerical information, numerical data in our analysis. Whereas in social sciences, humanities, management, commerce, they get a qualitative data and they convert that qualitative data into a quantitative data by giving some numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They use a scale. Normally, they get an information of a particular thing as good, bad, excellent, satisfactory, like that. So they use certain adjectives and get reply from the people or individuals or teams or groups or organizations, and then they convert it into numerical and they conduct the statistical analysis. So that is the type of data collection, data analysis which they do. But whereas when it comes to our case, our data collection and other things are entirely different. Though we may be using primary data and secondary data, primary data is mostly used. Secondary data also is derived through a primary study, not by yourself. For example, if you are doing a rainfall runoff modeling, you can measure rainfall using certain equipment. But the rainfall data is available in some organizations like Central Water Commission or websites. So how that data is generated, that data is maybe a secondary data to you, but it is primarily collected by someone else. So that is the difference. So that primary and secondary data, mostly the secondary data normally used in engineering studies also has some primary source. Okay, so that is the basic difference. So in this material which I have given, mostly the discussion is with respect to this social sciences and humanities and commerce management. So I am skipping this. Source of information, data, that is secondary source. See, here it is given. After deciding about the unit, a researcher has to decide about the source from which the information can be obtained or collected. For any statistical inquiry, the investigator may collect the data first hand, that is primary data, or he may use the data from other published sources such as publications of the government, semi-government organizations or journals and magazines, etc. So these are methods of data collection. Now, when you come to the data, in case of our engineering studies, the data is, the range of data is well known to us. That means we know the minimum and maximum parameters, maximum values of the parameters. So we will have an idea. So, to give a very simple example, you are conducting an experiment which is related to the flow of fluids in a system. Now, theoretically, suppose you want to measure the velocities. So, approximately, you should be able to find out the range in which the velocities will vary over your study. So, naturally, what you do is you consider or use such an equipment which is capable of measuring up to that particular value. Suppose your expected velocity is, say, 5 meters per second. And if your equipment is not capable of measuring up to 5 meters per second, then there is no use. So you will be therefore knowing the range and accordingly you will be planning it. Now, in the case of humanities and social sciences, what they do, see, they collect information from various people. And that's what they call a sample. See, because suppose they want to market a particular product, but then what they have to do, they have to get information from the market about how other similar products are functioning. So for that, what they do, they go to people. How many people they can go? There are so many thousands and lakhs of people who will be using such type of product. So they cannot go to all people. So what they do is they select some people. They identify people, or they group people into low income group, high income group, well educated, rural or urban, or those who are living in the commercial areas, those who are living in the industrial areas. So like that, they classify the people, population, and then for each population they collect some representatives. That is called as a sample. So that sample should be high. So they have that limitation, whereas we don't have that limitation. We are well aware of what type of range, or what range of parameters we are going to measure, and accordingly we can plan. So that is about the methods of collecting primary data is discussed here. So these are all, for example, mailed questions, indirect oral interviews. So like that, this particular indirect oral interviews, direct oral interviews, indirect oral interviews, information from correspondents, mailed questionnaire method. I can show. I will show you uh, the normal type of you see data collection. I am just skipping source of information, primary source, secondary source, data collection steps, review and compile secondary source information, planning and design data collection instruments to gather primary information, data collection, analysis. See, all this is basically in the social science and humanities oriented. See, for example, researcher is the primary method, that observation, interview, documents, audio, visual. So these are all the types of direct interview method. So this is interviews, questionnaire, survey, experimentation, case study, observation. So this is about interviews. So these are the survey methods: telephone, personal, mail, electronic, in-home, mall intercept, computer-assisted personal interviewing. So all these things are the latest methods of surveys. Questionnaire. So basic types of survey questions. So these are all not required for us. So that is the reason why I am not presenting this to you. But what is required is See, for us, we are more. I will send this to you. Reference 2, chapter 3 and 14. Reference 4, chapter 6, 14 and 19. See, actually, reference 2, reference 4. What are they? I think reference 2 is okay. Reference 2 is, I know what it is. Yeah. Actually, this is reference 2. Experimental methods for engineers. So, chapter 3 and chapter 14. Chapter 3 is analysis of experimental data, and chapter 14 is data acquisition and processing. So, in fact, this is a little bit out of your syllabus, but it is always better you know this. So, I will be passing on this PDF. Yes, this I will pass on to you. You can understand. Now we will break here just for 10 minutes. So meanwhile, you try to recapitulate what I have told, and once again give your attendance, and I will verify. Maybe I will be able to finish it in one session, or maybe maximum 2 sessions. So we have to discuss about the literature review, the importance of literature review. Actually, what is the literature review, and then various aspects about literature review. What is the difference between a literature review and a report, anecdotal report? And there are certain key elements in your literature review. So these are what are the key elements. So those key elements we will find. And then this is very, very important. There are 5 steps for conducting the literature review. They are known as Creswell's 5 steps. So these 5 steps we will understand. Step 1, identify key terms. Step 2, locate the literature. Step 3, critically evaluate and select. Step 4, organize. And step 5, proceed with the writing. So there are two literature reviews, preliminary and detailed. Preliminary will be done prior to your commencement of the work to understand the problem and to define the scope of your problem. So what are the various guidelines on style, mechanics and language to be used? So what are the things to be avoided? Do's and don'ts, what are they? So what needs to be included in the literature review? So in your literature review, what you have, what exactly you have to include? And then writing your research. Then plagiarism and ethics. What is research ethics? General ethical issues. Ethical issues can be not only in data collection, in analysis, as well as in reporting. So your ethics are related to your data collection and your data analysis and reporting. And what is plagiarism? And precautions to avoid plagiarism. Why plagiarism is bad and what are the various types of plagiarism? Unknowingly we do plagiarism. Knowingly some people do, unknowingly also we do. So how to avoid that? So what are the steps to combat? That means avoid the plagiarism. And when you are quoting directly, what you have to do? And when you are quoting indirectly, what you have to do? So while paraphrasing and summarizing, what precautions you have to take? I have given a list of plagiarism detecting software. So with the help of these software, when once your report is prepared, you can verify to what extent your report is free from plagiarism. Normally, 10 to 15% is acceptable limit. So these are web addresses of some plagiarism detecting software. So this is in detail literature review. See, here I have given, see, for the benefit of all of you, I think I have taken, yes, some examples. How to write literature review. So, some examples I have given, so that by following this, it will be easy for you to understand. So this is what we are going to study next Friday, next Thursday, and then we can proceed for the subsequent things. Okay. So with this, I am winding for today. And as per your syllabus, 1 minute. So we have considered we had discussed in depth the unit 1 and unit 2 we are going to discuss next week. Effective literature studies, approaches, analysis, plagiarism, research ethics. Then effective technical writing, how to write report, paper developing, research proposal, format, a presentation and assessment by a review committee. So this is your second unit and third unit. So fourth and fifth units are IPR. Okay, now you can leave. I am closing the class. Okay.